We are tired of being in the dark, is what delegates here have agreed unequivocally. But for the underdeveloped, yet resource-rich continent to advance, it needs to light up and power its mines, factories, farms, schools, and homes. Relying on green technology alone to play catch-up is not feasible, so a delicate balance between production and protection is required. Protecting nature is no longer just a nice thing to do, but now an imperative.
It's actually about services that the natural system are providing to us, and not just to us, but to our economy. And I think the recent crises in water scarcity, for example, are highlighting very much the fact that in a destroyed environment where natural systems don't work, our economy is struggling.
A transition phase where a mix of renewable and conventional energy are used together is imminent.
The share of clean energy in the mix is what we can predict as going to increase. I think there we can be fairly confident in our projections. So between now and 2025, it's possible you could have maybe even half the mix being clean energy, which would be quite an achievement. But then beyond 2025, it will still be increasing.
47 African governments have committed to decarbonizing by signing up to COP21 targets set in Paris last year. COP22, due in Marrakesh in Morocco later this year, presents an opportunity for the continent to state its case in the global fight to clean up the environment.
Some people in Africa say, look, we're not the biggest emitters and it costs more money to invest in renewable energy. What do you say to that?
I think the bigger emitters will have to do more. But this doesn't mean that Africa should not embrace a renewable energy path, because it's in your interest, it's in Africa's interest. Cutting emission is critical. So for us, Africa has the golden opportunity to leapfrog the dirty, wasteful, destructive energy production system that the rest of the world has gone through in the last 100 years, and really jump ahead, utilizing the technology which is available, the investment that must be made available for a continent like Africa, and develop a future based on renewable and clean energy.
The African Development Bank is putting its money where its mouth is and will put up $12 billion of its own money. It hopes that will leverage a further $30 billion from development partners and private investors. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Lusaka, Zambia.
And the man himself joins us now from the Zambian capital. Farai, good to see you. We're focusing on energy quite a bit at this summit, but to what extent can regional power pools solve the twin problems of electricity access and affordability?
Well, Rama, what you're talking about is something that is being talked about here, and those regional power pools and energy sharing arrangements are seen as a very practical way that Africa can bridge its energy deficits, taking advantage of the different endowments that the different countries and regions have. So, for instance, in West Africa, where there's a lot of gas, there could be excess gas power generated there. In East and Central Africa, wind-generated power. Down here in South Africa, a lot of our power is generated using hydro. And so feeding off each other, the different regions feeding off each other is seen as a very viable way of doing this. And it's not just talk, because we are told that countries like Ethiopia, for instance, are setting up power lines that will enable it to be able to export its power to countries like Kenya, to countries like Djibouti. So it is certainly a discussion that is underway and seen as a very feasible way in which Africa can achieve its aspirations, Rama.
Indeed, we do tend to cover quite a few of these events, and more often than not, we focus very strongly on the large scale, the big energy projects, like the power line you just mentioned, linking Kenya to Ethiopia, for example. That's 1,100 kilometers long, costs a few $1 billion. But what about the small scale off-grid solutions, off-grid solar, affordable gas cookers, more efficient stoves? Are those getting any attention as part of efforts to solve this energy deficit?
Well, definitely, Rama. I think given the makeup and the structure of African economies, SMEs, small players have a key role to play in this. Yesterday, there was a discussion that focused on, smaller solar projects, mini hydropower projects, for instance. And there are places in Zimbabwe, for instance, where communities are completely self-reliant using those off-grid solutions. So we know that the AfDB, through some of its partners, will be availing funds and directing and channeling those funds specifically to SMEs, to smaller players that can come up with, more, appropriate ways of dealing with these energy deficits. Obviously, the mega projects are critical, are crucial, but a realization that at a lower level, some of these solutions are better done and better handled at a lower level and at a lower scale. Rama.
Indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you for the update. That's Farai Mwakutuya. Of course, he's been delivering some pretty solid content coming out of the African Development Bank's annual meetings. This year it's being held in Lusaka.